I know there's a part in your story that I think you actually really ramped up your hiring and your growth, but you kind of decided to make a change because things were not working out or things were just not aligning to your own values anymore. And I think that's a very interesting thing because most of us might be looking to start a business and we have this dream. It's like, yeah, I'm going to scale to millions of dollars. I'm going to have this team and it's going to be amazing. And so you've went on that journey. You've gotten there, but it wasn't exactly as you had expected. And I want you to unpack that because I think an important lesson came from it.
Oh, absolutely. So up until that point, I always had it in the back of the mind. I want a 7-figure agency, 100K a month. Like there are these numbers, right? These goals that all entrepreneurs aspire to break these numbers, especially in the community that I was in. I was part of a mastermind at the time of agency owners, and they would literally, give out these awards to people who would meet these milestones, and we'd all share them in our groups and everything like that. So it's interesting looking back on it because it was the wrong goal because revenue is just a number at the end of the day. Right? It doesn't bring into account a whole lot of other things, including profit, which is very important. We started to run into some profitability issues as we're growing a little bit too fast. But then also, like the actual day-to-day of the business is going to be a lot different at that level than at whatever level might be more optimal for your lifestyle. So once we did grow, we grew past 100K a month in like a very short period of time. We doubled the business. And that felt really good for about a week until I realized how crazy things got. So we just doubled down on sales and marketing, and that's great that worked, but the operations and team side of things really needed to catch up. We were unable to hire people fast enough. We're just onboarding new people, and then all these new people needed to go through a training period while also just like getting caught up on this huge amount of work that we had to do, and it just became really chaotic. And that's when it started to have a big toll on my stress levels. And I was already working as much as I possibly could and just working long days, and I couldn't work any harder. It just needed more time to catch up. So that's when I realized that, revenue was really not the right metric. We grew way too fast, and that actually had a lot of negative consequences. And at the end of the day, it wasn't really worth it because, especially during that fast growth period, we were a lot less profitable because we had to take on all these other expenses to make up for this big overload of work and clients and get caught up on everything. So it's not like I had a whole lot more money in my bank account. And then I made a decision around that time that, like, okay, so I reached that goal. I checked that off the list. That's cool and everything. But what do I really want from this business? And the answer wasn't to be a 7-figure entrepreneur or whatever it is. That's just for the ego. For me, it was, well, I want to have more freedom, and my freedom was getting less and less because my team was getting bigger and bigger. We had all of a sudden 25 employees, and I wanted to have enough money to pay for the things that I want in my life. And I already had that before I grew to 7 figures. It's not like, the difference in the amount of income at that point was not really changing the way that I was living my life at all. So then it became a question. It's like, okay, so then why am I putting myself through this? Would it be so bad if we just were a little bit less aggressive on the sales team and we just kept things capped at a certain level instead of we always need to grow to the next milestone? Because as soon as I hit that 7-figure milestone, it was like, okay, now we need 250K a month. And how are we going to get to 250K? And it's like, but it was just pointless if I actually looked at my real goals and motivations for doing it.
It's so fascinating you share this because one of the conversations I had was actually with Yannick Silver. Now, he runs an entrepreneur group called Mavericks, and he was a legend, still is a legend, but was very, very popular in the online marketing space in the early 2000s. He was one of the OGs, right? Ran a conference, was called Underground. And the conversation I had with him, when he started and he was doing this, he was super excited. He's like, had goals. It was like, get the Aston Martin, get the Rolex, right? And I asked him a question that I want to ask you as well, and because I was really surprised with his answer. And the question was, do you have to go down the path of chasing this vanity goal to be able to come to a place where you realize that you have actually more important goals that you had set for yourself?
In my personal case, yes. Which is really funny because I grew up in a household that was, maybe lower middle class. Like, we definitely weren't poor, but we really didn't go on any vacations. Like the first time I even left the continent was like when I was 18 years old because my grandparents paid for it. And so I had definitely had some money mindset issues to overcome. And I always knew this, right? There's so many books and there's so many famous people you hear that like money's not the answer. And it's funny because I believed them. And it was like up until a point where I was making enough money to afford some of these things, I had no interest in it. But all of a sudden, it's like a guy who grows up with less money and you have money, I went through all the same stuff. I started buying like $800 jackets and just like random stuff, and very quickly realized that I don't feel any different. But it's so funny because like if you would have asked me before I went through all this business stuff, I would have had zero temptation. I would have thought it's stupid. But it just all came at the same time as the extra money, right? Like it's like once you have the possibilities, like all of a sudden it's possible and you can just do it if you want, then you kind of got to figure it out again. Right? So at least for me personally, I think you got to go through it.
It was funny because when I asked him that question, he didn't know the answer. Because like we can sit here and tell people like, don't go and chase the money. It's not going to be what makes you happy. But there's something that says, no, you have to go and have a taste so that you can realize that that's not the flavor you're looking for. You know what I mean? So I find it very interesting, and thank you for the honesty as well. And yeah, I do think that there's kind of it's almost like playing a video game where you got to get to the finish and then realize that maybe it's not even important, but you still got the path to go and discover it. And there were some learnings and things you had to discover along the way, which makes the journey itself important.